As the conflict between Ukraine and Russia continues to escalate, dramatic developments unfold in the beleaguered Eastern European nation. On January 27, 2025, Ukraine launched one of its largest drone strikes of the year, targeting over a dozen regions within Russia, including the capital Moscow. This bold offensive coincided with a series of striking events that have shaped the ongoing war, illustrating the complexities and far-reaching implications of this protracted conflict. The Ukrainian assault significantly impacted the Russian city of Ryazan, where an oil refinery was engulfed in flames. This facility is one of the largest in Russia, producing essential fuel for military operations, highlighting Ukraine's strategic focus on crippling supply lines that sustain the Russian war effort. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian General Staff reported that Russian air defenses were unable to intercept all incoming drones, a sign of the evolving aerial warfare tactics being employed by both sides. In the midst of these military maneuvers, the humanitarian crisis continues to worsen. Recent Russian airstrikes on Ukrainian cities have resulted in civilian casualties, with 3 fatalities reported in Kyiv following a series of attacks. This cycle of violence exacerbates the plight of civilians already struggling with the consequences of war, including displacement and loss of livelihoods. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for international support in the wake of these developments, especially with the impending inauguration of U.S. President Donald Trump. Zelensky expressed cautious optimism that Trump's administration might help facilitate peace talks, but emphasized that any agreement must include Ukrainian representation. "I believe that a deal could be made under Trump's presidency, but it's vital that Ukraine is part of any discussions," Zelensky stated. Trump's approach to the Ukraine conflict has raised eyebrows, particularly his comments suggesting that Ukraine should have considered capitulating to Russia earlier in the conflict. Such remarks have prompted skepticism among Ukrainians, who fear that peace negotiations could come at the expense of their sovereignty. Zelensky was fighting a much bigger entity, Trump noted in a recent interview, pointing to the complexity of negotiating with an adversary that shows little interest in a genuine resolution. As military actions intensify, the stakes remain high for both nations. Russian forces claimed the capture of the strategically significant town of Velyka Novosilka in the Donetsk region, though Ukrainian officials have reported that fighting continues on the outskirts. This development has prompted Zelensky to replace military commanders in the region, signaling both urgency and the gravity of the situation. The ongoing battle for control of key territories underscores the shifting dynamics of the conflict, with both sides vying for advantage as they head into what many anticipate will be a brutal spring. Amid the chaos, geopolitical tensions are palpable. British officials have warned Russia of increasing scrutiny over its military activities, including the tracking of Russian naval vessels in UK waters. This highlights the broader implications of the Ukraine conflict, where regional stability hangs in the balance and international alliances are tested. As the situation unfolds, the potential for a shift in U.S. foreign policy under Trump presents both opportunities and risks. The president's call for increased oil production among OPEC nations aims to undermine Russia's economic resources. Yet the feasibility of achieving a balanced resolution remains uncertain. Analysts speculate that any potential peace agreement might hinge on Ukraine's ability to maintain its territorial integrity while navigating the shifting political landscape. The conflict in Ukraine is far from resolved. The next few months will be critical as military operations continue and political dialogues evolve. With both sides entrenched in their positions, the prospects for peace remain tenuous. As the world watches closely, the unfolding narrative in Ukraine will undoubtedly shape the future of European security and international relations for years to come. As the conflict in Ukraine continues to escalate, recent developments signal a significant shift in the dynamics of the war. On January 27, 2025, Russian forces claimed to have captured the strategically important town of Velyka Novosilka in the Donetsk region, a move that has raised alarms within Ukrainian leadership. A spokesperson for Ukraine's eastern forces confirmed that while Russian troops had indeed entered the town, fierce fighting persisted on the outskirts, highlighting the fluid nature of the front line. This latest claim comes amid President Volodymyr Zelensky's ongoing efforts to bolster Ukraine's defenses. Following the loss of Velyka Novosilka, Zelensky made a pivotal decision, replacing the commander of the military formation responsible for the area for the third time in a year. This change underscores the urgency with which Ukraine is attempting to adapt to the rapidly changing battlefield conditions. Viktor Trehabov, a military spokesperson, emphasized the critical nature of the logistics hub in Pokrovsk, which remains a primary target for Russian advances. In a broader context, Zelensky's administration is also looking toward diplomatic avenues for resolving the conflict. The Ukrainian president expressed a belief that peace talks could involve U.S. President Donald Trump, who is set to take office again in a matter of weeks. Zelensky indicated that any negotiations must include Kyiv and suggested that the terms would likely be unclear even to Trump, given Russian President Vladimir Putin's apparent lack of interest in ending the war. The implications of these developments are profound. The capture of Velyka Novosilka not only represents a territorial loss for Ukraine but also signals a potential shift in momentum that Russian forces could exploit to further encircle key Ukrainian positions. As Trehabov noted, the Pokrovsk direction has become a hotbed of conflict, accounting for significant combat activity and underscoring the ongoing struggle for territorial control. As the military situation evolves, the humanitarian impact remains dire. Reports indicate that desperate Ukrainian families are resorting to illegal routes to reunite with children in the UK following changes to the Homes for Ukraine scheme. Such choices reflect the broader crisis faced by civilians in the war-torn nation as they navigate the treacherous landscape of displacement and uncertainty. In parallel to these military and humanitarian developments, the international political landscape is also shifting. Zelensky's outreach to Trump comes amid speculation that the new U.S. administration may adopt a different stance on the Ukraine conflict, raising concerns that a potential deal could sideline Kyiv. Trump has previously suggested that Ukraine should have capitulated to Russia, a stance that has drawn criticism and skepticism from both Ukrainian officials and international observers. As the conflict enters another year, the future remains uncertain. The interplay between military engagements, humanitarian crises, and political maneuvers will shape the coming months. With battles raging in the east and diplomatic discussions on the horizon, stakeholders on all sides of the conflict are bracing for what may lie ahead. The Ukrainian military's resilience and strategic adjustments will be crucial in the fight to reclaim lost territory and navigate the complexities of peace negotiations, while the international community watches closely for signs of a durable resolution to this ongoing crisis. In an intriguing diplomatic dance, President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin have been circling each other, hinting at potential negotiations that extend beyond the immediate crisis in Ukraine. As tensions rise and the geopolitical landscape shifts, both leaders are signaling a readiness to re-engage in discussions that may include nuclear arms control, a topic that could reshape the dynamics of international relations. Since Trump's inauguration on January 20, 2025, the rhetoric between the two leaders has escalated. Trump has been vocally critical of Putin, accusing him of destroying Russia and threatening to impose additional sanctions if the Kremlin does not engage in negotiations to resolve the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. This approach marks a notable shift from Trump's previous term, where his relationship with Putin was characterized more by flattery and a perceived camaraderie. In response, Putin has employed a strategy of flattery, suggesting that the war in Ukraine might not have occurred had Trump remained in power. He has expressed a willingness to meet Trump to discuss not only the fate of Ukraine but also broader issues of strategic interest, including nuclear arms control. "We need to talk calmly about all areas that are of interest to both the US and Russia," Putin remarked, underscoring his eagerness for dialogue. Amid these developments, the looming expiration of the New START treaty, essential for regulating nuclear arsenals, adds urgency to the situation. The treaty, which limits the number of deployed strategic nuclear warheads, is set to expire in February 2026. Trump has indicated a desire to explore opportunities for denuclearization, although it appears he may be focused on negotiating reductions in nuclear stockpiles rather than complete denuclearization. This nuanced distinction could open avenues for dialogue, particularly if it aligns with Putin's interest in discussing strategic stability. As both leaders prepare for a potential conversation, the dynamics of the Ukraine war remain complex. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has expressed concerns about being sidelined in negotiations between Trump and Putin. He has emphasized the necessity of including Ukrainian interests in any peace talks, fearing that Putin may attempt to manipulate the situation to Russia's advantage. If we are not part of the discussions, the outcome could be detrimental to Ukraine, Zelensky warned, highlighting the precarious nature of the current geopolitical climate. On the ground, the situation in Ukraine continues to evolve. Reports indicate that Russian forces have made gains capturing strategic locations in the Donetsk region, while Ukrainian troops are strategically withdrawing to avoid encirclement. These developments underscore the urgent need for a diplomatic resolution, a sentiment echoed by Trump, who has positioned himself as a potential peacemaker. Yet the effectiveness of sanctions imposed by the US and its allies on Russia remains a topic of debate. Analysts suggest that while these measures have affected the Russian economy, they have not led to the anticipated collapse. Instead, Russia has shown resilience, adapting to the sanctions and maintaining trade relations with countries like China and India. This adaptability poses a challenge for any future negotiations, as Putin's administration may feel emboldened by its economic survival despite Western pressures. As the stage is set for potential talks between Trump and Putin, the world watches closely. With the specter of nuclear arms control on the agenda and the Ukraine conflict unresolved, the outcomes of these discussions could have profound implications for international stability. Whether Trump can navigate the complexities of these negotiations while satisfying both domestic and international expectations remains to be seen. As both leaders prepare to engage, the potential for a new chapter in US-Russia relations hangs in the balance, with significant ramifications for global security. In a moment marked by both ongoing conflict and solemn reflection, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed reporters on Saturday, asserting that the United States has not halted its military aid to Ukraine despite recent political shifts in Washington. This reassurance comes in the wake of newly inaugurated Secretary of State Marco Rubio's announcement of a 90-day pause on foreign aid grants, which raised concerns about the continuity of support crucial to Ukraine's defense efforts. Zelensky emphasized that military aid remains vital, stating, "I am focused on military aid. It has not been stopped, thank God." This military assistance accounts for approximately 40% of Ukraine's defense capabilities, underscoring its importance as the war with Russia continues to escalate. Zelensky's statements were made during a press conference alongside Moldovan President Maya Sandu, highlighting the interconnectedness of their nations in the face of Russian aggression. Moldova has been grappling with an energy crisis exacerbated by disruptions in gas supplies from Russia. Sandu accused Moscow of orchestrating this crisis, stating, "Russia's latest move has been to orchestrate an energy crisis," a sentiment that illustrates the broader regional implications of the ongoing conflict. In a bid to assist, Zelensky announced Ukraine's readiness to offer coal to Moldova, thereby strengthening ties between the two nations during a challenging time. As the geopolitical landscape shifts, Zelensky also commented on the prospects for peace talks, particularly in light of potential negotiations involving former U.S. President Donald Trump. Zelensky asserted that any dialogue to end the war must include Ukraine, expressing hope that both Europe and the United States would participate in meaningful discussions. As for what the setup of the talks will be, I really hope Ukraine will be there, America, Europe and the Russians, he said, illustrating the complexities and intricacies of any potential agreement. Additionally, the situation on the ground remains dire. Reports indicated that 3 civilians lost their lives in shelling within the Russian-occupied Kherson region, while drone attacks in the eastern Kharkiv region resulted in injuries and damage. Ukrainian air defenses have remained vigilant, successfully intercepting a significant number of Russian drone assaults, but the toll on civilian life continues to mount. Local authorities reported targeted strikes in various districts of Kharkiv, with ongoing assessments of casualties highlighting the persistent threat faced by residents. In a somber parallel to the war, Zelensky also participated in a memorial ceremony in Kiev to honor the victims of the Holocaust, laying candles and paying respects alongside representatives of the Jewish community. This act of remembrance on International Holocaust Remembrance Day serves as a poignant reminder of the historical context of conflict and the need for vigilance against tyranny. As the international community watches closely, the dynamics of military aid, humanitarian crises, and potential peace negotiations will continue to unfold. The upcoming months could prove pivotal in shaping the future of Ukraine, its relationships with Western allies, and the broader geopolitical landscape as the specter of war looms on. With the situation ever evolving, the emphasis on dialogue and the inclusion of all affected parties in negotiations remains crucial for any hope of a lasting resolution.